improvement in power generation and supply. But it's not part of it. And we publish
Hello everyone, welcome to Dateline. On today's edition, we will consider inflation and cost of living, how rising inflation in Nigeria affects everyday citizens, small businesses, and the overall economy. Our discussion will also look at government's response to mitigating the impact of inflation on food prices, fuel, and essential goods. Needless to say is that the impact of this inflation is being felt by everyone in Nigeria. Consumers are facing higher costs for imported commodities and increased transportation costs, which are leading to lower levels of consumption and social unrest. I'm Joyce Nwosu. See you in a moment. Welcome again. Inflation is the rate at which the price of goods and services increases over time, which can lead to a higher cost of living. As of January 2024, the headline inflation rate in Nigeria was 29.90%, which was an increase of 0.98 percent points from December 2023. This is also an 8.08 point increase from January 2023. Nigeria's inflation rate rose for the second straight month in October 2024, climbing to a 4-month high of 33.9% from 32.7% in September. The rise was driven primarily by escalating food prices, soaring energy costs, and ongoing volatility in foreign exchange markets. Food inflation, which makes up most of Nigeria's inflation basket, quickened further to 39.2% in October, up from 37.8% in September, amid reduced harvest caused by severe flooding and ongoing crisis in key agricultural regions. Transportation inflation also picked up to 29.3%, driven by higher petrol and gas prices after subsidy removal, while housing and utilities inflation rose to 28.8%, up from 28.6% in September, amid higher electricity tariffs. The core inflation, which excludes the prices of volatile agricultural products and energy, quickened to an all-time high of 28.4% in October, up from 27.4% in the previous month. On a monthly basis, consumer prices climbed by 2.6% after a 2.5% rise in the previous reports. This statistical data simply reveals that the cost of living is rising relentlessly. Now, for many, bread and milk have become a luxury and 3 meals a day a rarity. Rice is now usually eaten only on festive occasions because of its high cost. For some places in Nigeria, a certain measurement called mudu, a mudu of rice is now 3,500, between 3,500 and 4,000 naira. Those who suffer most are the unskilled laborers and poorer people who are in no position to demand the higher and higher incomes needed to keep up with rising prices. For these people especially, inflation is a thief that robs the most needy. Who or what is to blame for this growing inflation? Many people blame the government. One basic cause of rising inflation is when the government has been spending more money than they have been making. Now let's look at an African country whose inflation rate we can learn from. Kenya manages inflation in a few ways, including floating exchange rate. Kenya uses a floating exchange rate policy, which means the value of the local currency is determined by supply and demand in the foreign exchange market. 2. Inflation targeting. In 2013, Kenya's central bank adopted an inflation target of 5% with a standard deviation of 2.5%. This means that the inflation rate can change from 2.5% to 7.5% without being considered a threat to the country's macroeconomic stability. Thirdly, the Consumer Price Index (CPI). The CPI tracks changes in the cost of a basket of goods and services commonly purchased by households. It's a key indicator of inflation's impact on everyday expenses. In September 2024, Kenya's inflation rate was 3.6%, down from 6.8% in September 2023. The slowdown was mainly due to softer price increases for food, housing, and transportation. We take another break at this point. When we return, we'll be joined by an expert. Do stay with us.
I would also like to congratulate and commend the organizers of this event, Mr. House himself, who is the driving force behind this project and who is so passionate about providing housing for the masses in Nigeria. I congratulate you. This is a very good event and it should be sustained.
You're still watching Dateline. Like I said, we'll be joined by someone who has a lot to say, a lot that you and I can learn from. He's a graduate of Lagos Business School with Amechi Ajana. He's also currently the president of St. Peter's Cooperative Society. Thank you for joining us on Dateline. So let's get started. Let's start with the major contributory factors to the problem of inflation in Nigeria. Do you agree they're primarily subsidy removal and naira devaluation?
Yes, well, before we talk about subsidy removal and the devaluation of the currency, let's look at the factors that led to it. Of course, when we see when we look at it, when we understand the key factor, that's why we now understand why subsidy have to be removed. Even during the former, was it sometime around, was it around 2012, there was a time that the government attempted to remove subsidy before that people protested. And at that point, I understand, I actually support the removal.
At that point, it would have been healthy
for
Nigeria
healthy
to remove at that point. But
yeah.
then we had so many protests, including Occupy Nigeria.
Exactly. But let's critically look at this from the economic point of view. Let's not just, I'm not a politician, so okay. I'll look at it as a trader. So now, even from our elementary knowledge of economics, you understand that everything centers on demand and supply. Yeah. Now we have a situation. We have a situation where our aggregate consumption is above our aggregate production.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look at Nigeria as a country, you understand that while our population keep on increasing, our GDP, our production kept on going down. And now the government, on the other hand, cannot continue subsidizing for consumption. So subsidy has to be removed, but it has to be done with human face, because there are people that the removal is the impact is is so negative on people. Okay, so palliatives supposed to be in place, or measures supposed to be in place.
Before you
Yes,
remove
subsidy. Then the same thing, in the same way, the currency devaluation. Okay, definitely, currency is not just something. I don't believe in a fixed exchange rate. Floating exchange rate that is determined by forces of demand and supply is always better. If you look at some of our people that have gone outside the country, those that Japan, you will notice that when they're in Nigeria here, the way they work seem to be less than what they are putting in now towards work. So the way to solve this problem is that the people have to become more productive. If the people are not more productive, definitely the economy will keep on biting hard on people.
Okay, we'll get back to that, because talking about a productive populace, you would probably have some things in place.
Yeah.
You know, the environment, the right workable, maybe financing solutions, accessing loan, you know, all the bottlenecks that you need to probably set up a production firm.
The capacity building.
Sort more like it has to be in place by the government. And if you don't have those things in place, when people still have to deal with power issues, energy, and all of that, and well, that would certainly tell on how much we can churn out in our production drive.
Yeah.
Now let's move on. Have you seen some of the IMF recommendations on our economy? Do you think they stand a chance to lead us on the path of recovery?
I have actually seen some of them, which is also some of what you mentioned, like total removal of subsidy on energy and the rest of them. I think for a nation to do well, we have to look inward ourselves and understand the peculiarity of Nigerian situation and come up with a more kind of solution that is localized, which is also not too far, because if you look at some of what they are saying, of course you will know that something like we have some challenges which they recommended that the government should look into, like in the area of security, okay, in the area of agriculture. You see that most of these things are interwoven, okay. If farmers couldn't go to farm because of insecurity, it will definitely tell on food production, the output here. Yeah, also you also look at in the area of even housing, even transportation, even education. All those things are interwoven. So our government should look into that. Of course, I know that most people will not be too happy with currency devaluation and subsidy removal.
Yes, because the layman doesn't want all the big grammar. He just wants you to give him practical solutions to his problem. And you would agree that currently in Nigeria, apart from the anger problem, there's a hunger problem.
Yeah, true.
The food inflation, the rate at which the food commodity keeps going up, rising, and all of that. So that is one major thing that the government should work on. And they have tried. I think there's a removal on the VAT for importation, some food items being imported into the country. Government has, a clause in that area whereby you may not pay VAT on some. We'll get to those tax reforms by the government later. Now, you said something about we being a producing country rather than just being a consumption or consuming country. Now, let's look at Kenya. What do you think they did well? Because in my background in profiling this particular subject matter, we looked at Kenya and how they have had a slow rate with their inflation crisis. So what do you think Nigeria can learn from that country?
Okay.
Another African country. So
Yeah, but I think part of what Kenya did is introduction of floating exchange rate. Okay.
and we're towing that path, right?
Yeah, we are towing that part. The only thing is that at the beginning is not to, we are like in a country or like in a family where many of us are used to free meal. Okay, a lot of us are used to free meal, but then the government have to do more than physical policy control. We have to, the government have to actually come down and engage more, put more interest in the SMEs, because the SMEs, they are one that drive most of the economy. If you check the public sector, there's in terms of job creation, because it's when people now have job that they can be productive. Okay, so such have to be done by our government, and then also, like I said earlier, the area of is, if you ask anybody in Nigeria now, part of what people are crying for is insecurity. Okay, so the government have to have a way of looking into that. Let's understudy what Kenya did, because it's similar to our own. Their economy is similar to our own, since we are the same African country. But I also believe that if the right measure is taken, that it will get better.
Okay. Now, should government make any changes to its economic policies due to this inflation? Already, you're on the path of the government. You said something about supporting that they floated the currency, that was a good one, based on research, how some other people have done that and then it worked. They saw the results and all that. So do you think they're towing the right path?
Yeah, if I may suggest some of the solution that the government need to solve this problem, I think we should look more towards local solution. By local solution, we have some institutions in Nigeria that if government could partner with them. Like, I give you an example. When I attended this in Lagos Business School, I find out that they have team of people that really understand, and they groom people, train people on how to be productive in this particular economy. So it's not just such a solution is not what you can just sit down in your office alone and solve. It involves a kind of a collaboration. Do you understand? We need a kind of a collaboration or partnership between our governments and the agencies and the institutions, coming together with some of the experts that already know the solution. I will tell you that most times Nigerians, the same Nigerians that might not be doing well in Nigeria, when they are given opportunity, when they go outside, you see them performing better, because an enabling environment is being created for them to thrive, and they are given that opportunity for them to thrive. And that's the reason why most of our young people, you see, all of them would like leave the country. But we can change the narration towards government supporting business, supporting job creation.
If you ask them, they'll
Yeah.
say they've been doing that.
They'll be doing that.
They'll tell you they've been doing that. I mean, the VAT 10% off VAT for now. I mean, there's a temporary measure on that you don't have to pay that, and then they have this importation of food for now to ensure that people get to pay very minimal, little amount for food items.
Okay, I think more support is needed. If you notice, most of our manufacturing industries, they actually, a lot of them are dying off. Okay, part of their solution, part of their problem, you talk about energy, like power supply. I think government should engage in providing them, I mean, a cheaper source of energy supply. Okay. You will notice, though I've not been there, but I hear from some people that was it this company Geometric in Aba, when they provided the electricity to Ariari and the market in Aba. So with more constant supply of electricity, their production in that area has already gone up. So the government should think about how to replicate that kind of model in other places. It's still one of the solutions. Government should also look at more support to our farmers. Okay, it's not just sometimes another problem. Of course, there is a corruption also in the system, whereby maybe from the seat of government some money or support is released, but it's not getting down to the grassroots. So some of those things also need to be addressed, and then proper orientation also have to be given to the people. And the people also on their own, because where we are just looking at government, the government alone cannot solve all the problem. I was discussing with someone. I was telling them that when you look at economy, I think 80% or I mean some reasonable percent, let me not say some reasonable percent is being contributed by the people. Okay, so the people we also need to change some of the ways we do things. Thank you.
We've been talking the inflation and the cost of living in Nigeria, and doing so well has been Amechi Ajana, a graduate of Lagos Business School and the current president of St. Peter's Cooperative Society. He has made so much contributions, especially with regards to what the government should do. And like Abraham Lincoln said, don't just ask what your government can do for you. You should also think about what you can do for your government. Thankfully, Nigerian government has been coming up with tax waivers, agricultural fertilizers produced to farmers, and a lot of other initiatives. But then it's also time we also think outside the box and not just depend on the government. Let's take this break. I hope you stay with us. See you soon. Thanks for staying with us. This is Dateline, and we've been looking at how buying bread or milk shouldn't be a luxury anymore. How you and I can keep up with the rising inflation rate in our country. And Mr. Mechi, thank you so much. You've been doing well. Now let's move on to global organizations, the IMF, for instance, the World Food Program and the like. They've been helping out, especially with their policies and saying yes or no, endorsing and refuting. What do you think that they could probably be doing better? Do you see them helping out with this situation?
Well, with the international organization, I think you take a look at some countries that have been on a similar path that we are now. Of course, economically, when you look at a country like China, before the Chinese economic reform, you notice that China used to be a very poor country before. And it's the same, some of these reform that is being introduced, though I will tell you, reform is not easy. Some of them are painful, but then in the long run, it will benefit the people. So we will see how we could try to cushion in the effect and also manage, like you said earlier, that there is anger and hunger and an angry man is a hungry man, okay? But at the same time, it's also what we produce that we are going to eat.
So there's a lot to do in that production space.
Of course,
to ensure that Nigeria is more as a production nation.
There's of course there's a lot to do in that. It's a very simple. In a way, it is simple because if as a farmer, let's say, because now we're talking about food, if as a farmer you are producing more than what you are eating, you have surplus, right? So while all those recommendations are being made to enable us to increase productivity and become a better nation, but you know, for someone whose salary or income, monthly income, is barely enough to buy a bag of rice, or barely enough to even transport such a person to and fro the work in a month, there's no grammar that you are speaking, there's no recommendation that you are making to a hungry person that makes sense apart from. So there should be a kind of a social incentive, especially for the poor in the society, because that is part of social security. So government should look deeply into social security, because if such is not taken care of, we might have a kind of civil unrest due to hunger that will be difficult to contain. We need a peaceful environment to even implement those reforms. Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Amechi Ajana, for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you. We hope we'll get to see you on one of our other programs on Housing TV.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, so we've been looking at inflation and the cost of living in Nigeria. Don't forget, all of the recommendations made by our guests would certainly go a long way to tackle inflation and the living condition of Nigerians. It's also vital to pay attention to practical economic policies with a goal to make Nigeria a producing country and not just a dumping site for importation. See you next time on Dateline. I'm Joyce Swanson. Thanks for watching.
Housing TV Africa, your first in housing development broadcasting.